Hey guys, how's it going? We're going to be showing you how to do cracked patina. Now look at this. Look at this finish. I want you to look at it really quickly. What do you see? I want you to start learning how to dissect it. Now when I'm showing you finishes like this, let's look at this for just a second. What's the smallest thing that you see? It's staying. When you're doing a cracked patina finish, the smallest that you normally are going to see, where it looks the deepest, is going to be the first application. That's what I'm wanting to teach you how to dissect this. What's the second thing that you see? The smallest, look at this, let's look down here. This is Bauhaus Buff. This is a really light color. That's what color we're gonna start with. So the first coat to this is gonna be our stain. The second is going to be our Bauhaus Buff. Our second color is actually going to be Atelier, and then we're gonna finish out with A Good Man Is Hard to Find. So part of the reason why I'm wanting to show you this, if you love creating gorgeous, chippy Grody finishes, you're gonna love today's tutorial, because that's what we're gonna be going over. We're gonna show you how to use cracked patina, how to create a double Oreo cookie is what I call it, finish that has a beautiful texture to it like this. Now, this is a great finish that looks great on consoles, it looks great on nightstands. It really is more successful on more carved surfaces where there's more of a texture and that you don't want a lot of flat surface areas. I would not do a finish like this on like an extensive headboard that's very flat. So is everybody with me? All right, so let's look at this. We're doing a cracked patina finish today in 3 colors. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, so if this is your first time watching, my name is Amy Howard, and I'm called the Mother Maker with a Maker Studio and Amy Howard Collection. That's my sister company. And while Amy Howard at Home is all about DIY furniture refinishing, we say our tagline here is rescue, restore, redecorate. That I love teaching you how to create different finishes to use on accessories, on lamps, on anything that you have in your home that you want to be able to give it a totally different look. And a lot of people, I love this part, a lot of folks that follow us on this feed are actually furniture refinishers, and they are people that are rescuing and restoring furniture, and it's turned into a business. And I love that too, because I did that for a long, long time. So hey Rose, so as you pop on here, hey Margaret, say hey, tell me where you're tuning in from. I truly, truly love seeing my students, even though a lot of times you are my virtual students, and watching these Facebook Lives, because I watch you, I go back on the before and after, and I remember the name, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of him. They learned from the tutorial, maybe from my YouTube channel, and then that way you're able to go and turn around and create this finish yourself. All right, so let me just show you one more time what we're getting ready to do. This is the finish that I'm getting ready to show you how to do. It's really absolutely fab. Girl from Houston, this is a Houston, Texas finish, honey. This is it right here. All right, so let's turn this down as always, because I need you to be able to see the stages in which we go. I like for you to be able to kind of see the breakout of it. It helps you understand visually what it is that we're doing. So let's turn this camera down so that way you can see it. Here we go, you ready? All right, so let's start. Step 1. We are going to start with raw wood. Why is that? Because let's look at the finish again. When we are working on this, the color that you see underneath at the very first, what is it? It's stained. So we're gonna need to stain the wood. If you already have a piece that is stained, then I'm gonna say it is okay to start with that. Please make sure that you clean it with Clean Slate, all right? So the first thing we're gonna do is stain it. So let me move these out of the way. So I want you to be able to kind of see in the steps that we're gonna go. So I used our gel stain. If you haven't used it, it's really quite fabulous. This is English Walnut, and it's very easy to use. It comes in a gel form. It's water-based. It smells amazing if you have smell-o-vision here. And I am going to just use a rag and apply it on here. So I'll dip it down in here like this. And then I'm just gonna rub it on top of my wood. Now this is if you're working on a raw piece. There again, if your piece is already stained, I'm gonna say okay. In this instance, you can work with it. So let's just get the stain everywhere. Make sure to wipe off the excess and allow it to dry for about an hour, and then we're ready to go to our first step, okay? All right, so this is after the gel stain has completely dried, and you see what happens. It goes down to a very matte finish. So the first thing that we're gonna do is, when we are creating this cracked patina finish, is we're going to apply the cracked patina. So stain first, number 2, cracked patina. So I've poured just a little bit of this cracked patina. This is water-based. If you want to be able to thin it, you can. If you thin it with warm water, guys, not cold water, thin it with warm water, then that's going to mean that your crack is going to be thinner. If you put it on thicker, what does that mean? That means that your crack is going to be wider. It's going to be heavier. All right, so as a rule, I'll add just a little bit of water to it. It's easier to go on. In the summertime, it's gonna thicken up a little bit. So I will definitely, when the humidity, I live here in Memphis, and when the humidity hits, it's gonna be a little bit harder to apply. So I'm applying the cracked patina with just a regular sponge brush. You can use a chip brush if you want to. And you do wanna make sure that you apply this. You see, I'll work around in my carved areas like this and get it everywhere, but you do wanna make sure that you come back in one direction with the grain of the wood, and that you don't have any holidays. One thing that you're gonna notice, people are like, what is she talking about? What does she mean by holiday? Holiday is an area where you actually missed putting the cracked patina or the paint, and we call it a holiday, so it's negative space. So you wanna make sure that you get this everywhere and then come back over it where it's nice and smooth. Now, the way to be able to tell that you've got it on there, it's gonna be shiny. It will stay shiny. When it's wet going on, it's shiny, and when it dries, it's going to be shiny. That way you know you have it everywhere, all right? So after it's dried for about an hour, this is what it's gonna look like. But you may touch it. If you put it on too thick, it's really going to make it more difficult. So don't put it on too thick. A lot of people think, oh, a little bit is great. If I put on a lot, that's greater. No, that's not the case all the time. So let's stick with this. Let's have a nice application, but not have it where it's too thick, but it is going to be shiny. The other thing that you're going to notice, and these are really key points that I want you to remember when you're going to be executing this, it probably would be good to come back and watch this video again and remember these points. This will never ever completely dry. This is going to be kind of gooey and sticky, and so it will stay that way forever. You've got to put something on top of it in order for it to be sealed. So you can't ever leave it like this. All right, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my first color. I'm working with Bauhaus Buff. Guys, you know what's crazy about this? This is our #1 selling color. Out of all 100 colors, we sell more Bauhaus Buff than any other color. All right, so I'm gonna dip my brush down in here. I'm just using a chip brush. And I'm going to work fairly quickly because I need, when I lay this down, I'm gonna look at you for just a second. All right, so when I start painting, I've got to finish. So I need you, when you are working on one particular area, let's say on a drawer, you need to start that drawer in the upper left-hand corner, work your way down and all the way across very quickly. If you're working on the top of a piece of furniture, do the entire top. You don't want to do bits and pieces because you're not ever able to join them in together to be able to look like it's all fused, like this finish, all right? So let's say you're doing a nightstand, or let's say you're doing a console. Do the entire front of the apron all at one time. Then do the side of the apron. Then do the leg. Is everybody with me? So let's work on one section at a time from start to finish. And that's gonna be in the color that you're working in. All right, so let me turn this back down. Hey, okay. Now, so we stained it. I've got my cracked patina on, and now I'm gonna lay down my Bauhaus Buff. This is the first color. Now, when you're working with the first color, you're gonna take off the most. Y'all are like, what do you mean you're gonna take off? Just watch me. So I'm gonna pounce that just a little bit, but I'm gonna come back. I do not wanna leave that to where that's pounced. This is drying really quickly. If you don't get it everywhere, that's okay, that's not a problem. All right, so I'm gonna let this is literally like letting paint dry. As it starts to dry, you know what it's gonna start happening? It's gonna start cracking. Let me get that. Can you see that without it getting out of focus? You've got to be really careful. And when I say this, guys, there's an art form to this. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You will learn from your mistakes as you're doing this, because this is one of those finishes you're gonna fall in love with, but you're gonna have to learn the idiosyncrasies about it in the beginning. All right, so as it will start to dry, can you see that? As it will start to dry, what, maybe 2 minutes has gone by? You're gonna start to see cracking where you very first applied it. Look, see here? There's where I very first applied it. That's where it's starting to crack. And then you can start working up here and then work your way down. So I'm gonna use one of my favorite tools, my hands. So I'm gonna take my fingers, look at this. Look at this. This is magic, magic, look at this. And I'm gonna press into it. Now, do not touch this until this starts to set, until it starts to crack. Those of you that, if you love Grody chippy furniture, you've just hit jackpot. Now, look at this. See how this easily came up? I'm being very strategic too, and how I'm doing my placement on it. I am wanting to make sure that I take off more this first time. Look at this. This first time. And then as I lay my colors on, I'll still be able to see my stain. Now, look what's gonna happen. My hands are gonna start getting saturated in paint. If I'm not careful, this will become a positive tool. I don't want my hands to become positive tools. So you need something near you that you can wipe your hands as you're working, and you need to be able to, it's a solution. Now this is water-based, so it will just clean with soap and water. So I just wanna make sure my hands are nice and clean so I can continue. Now see the bottom part where it's starting to crack? All I have to do is just press my fingers in and it will start to lift that. Isn't that wild? Look at that. Now I'll be quite honest with you. I was talking to Michelle right before I went live and looking at the finished of this first step, and I was like, I love this first step. I love it with just the Bauhaus buff on it. Isn't it fab? While it's a little raw, I could come back, I could lightly sand this down, and I could finish it up with maybe a glaze, and then do light and dark wax, and just be happy as a clam. But I'm wanting to show you how to create multiple colors. So let's look at our sample again. Here we go. Here's our finished sample. Now, do you see? Let's dissect it. We started with the stain, and now we've got our Bauhaus buff. Can you see the coloring? Now we're gonna go to our second color, but before we do, what do we need to do? We're gonna put another coat of cracked patina on. Is everybody with me? Now, what I would suggest in between coats is take some 220 sandpaper. And the only reason you're gonna sand this is because as you are manipulating this with the cracked patina, it's going to get kind of thick. And you're gonna notice once it dries after about 30 minutes that it's really rough. And we're wanting to lightly sand it with 220 before we go to the next step. All right? So now I'm gonna put on another coat of cracked patina. So let's grab my cracked patina and my sponge brush. So guys, if you're just now popping on, my name is Amy Howard. I'm with Amy Howard at Home. And I am showing you a chippy Grody cracked patina finish today that you're gonna love. It's a great technique that looks great on a lot of pieces of furniture. As you pop on here, just say hey, because I love seeing where you're coming from. All right, so now I've put on, after my paint dried, I put on another coat of cracked patina. That's why we call this the double Oreo cookie, and you're gonna see why in just a second. Allow this to dry. If you wanna speed it up, hit it with a hairdryer. All right, so now I have one that's already dry. It's like a cooking show. Michelle got me all situated. All right, so now this has my stain, my cracked patina, my Bauhaus buff, then it has cracked patina on top of the Bauhaus buff. Now what do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add my second color. So now my second color is none other than Atelier. So I'm just using it straight out of the can. I'm gonna grab a clean chip brush, And I'm going to apply the Atelier One Step on top of this. Again, start at the top, and you want to work your way across fairly quickly. If you are working on a console, a nightstand, or whatever, only do one section at a time. And you've got to work fairly quickly. Come back and make sure that you go with the grain. Even if you have to pounce down in the crevices just a little bit, or the cracks. Don't you love this color combination? I will tell you, this is a finish that will go, it's pretty timeless. It will go with just about anything, and I do recommend people to have at least one Grody crunchy, crusty finish in their house. I think it looks so good. All right, so now the same thing again is happening. I'm gonna let it sit here and dry for just a minute. I'm gonna clean my hands because I'm getting ready to actually pull it. And as I start to see it dry, what's gonna happen? You're gonna start to see the cracks. As it dries down, it will start to crack. Now, if it is still wet, if it's shiny, if the paint is still wet, guys, please don't touch it. Because all you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving wet paint around. All right. Oh, you're so sweet, Liz. Thank you so much. All right, is everybody with me? So do not, while this is drying, don't get excited and don't start touching it. You have got to make sure you don't start to touch it to lift the paint right at the point of it meeting its tack point, T-A-C-K, tack. So once it starts to dry and you start to see that sheen go away just a little bit, then you have the ability to be able to go in and start to lift it. Now let me see, I think the top part is starting to dry. The part that is going to dry first is what? It's the part that you painted first. So right here, watch this. Look at this. Look at this. I want to continue to take off enough that I want to be able to see, look at this, how it's lifting. Make sure your hands are completely dry. Look at that. Isn't that fun? And it will start to lift this. Now, I'm going to have to put my camera down so I can keep working. So let's do that real quick. Let me wipe my hands. If you have questions about this, just ask me. I'll be popping on here and looking at this later on. All right, so let me turn this down. My hands are now all slippery. Hold on. I'm going to have to turn this down. Sorry, guys. All right. So now let me dry my hands off again. If I wait too long and it completely dries, there's nothing I can do to manipulate this paint. And that's part of why we've got to work quickly. Sometimes if you don't like working with your hands, you can come in and actually pull it with a rag too. And what I want to do is I want to pull enough so one, I see the texture, I see the stain underneath, I see the white that I first put on. Look at this. Do you love that? Isn't that fun? All right, now, so now what do I do, Amy? Well, we're gonna do one more step. I want one more color because let's look at the difference. Now, could you stop here? Yes, you could. If you like this color combination, then that's absolutely, you can stop right here. But this is where we're going. I want to add that dark color on top. So what do you think we're going to do? We're going to lightly sand this with 220 grit sandpaper once it dries. We're going to add another coat of cracked patina, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put A Good Man Is Hard to Find on top of it, and that's going to give me this look. Is everybody with me? Are you seeing it now? Hopefully, I want the light bulb to go off. I want you to have the aha. I want you to go, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Amy, this is my next finish. All right, so here we go. We're going to go in and add a little bit more cracked patina. We're going to allow the cracked patina to dry. Make sure your paint's completely dry. We're going to allow this to dry about 45 minutes to an hour. If it's really hot or if you want to hit it with a hairdryer, you absolutely can. That is not a problem at all. So then, once it's dry, guess what? It's going to look like this. It's going to be shiny again. Why? Because we put the cracked patina on it, and the cracked patina is always going to be shiny, and the cracked patina will never fully ever dry. So we've always got to sandwich it. That's why I call this an Oreo cookie finish. This, because we do 2 coats of the Oreo cookie in between the paints, I call this the double Oreo cookie. Is everybody with me? All right, so now this is dried. It's still kind of sticky, but it's perfectly all right for me to go in and put my paint on it. All right, so let's do our last coat. And that is going to be A Good Man Is Hard to Find, that was named after Gene Howard. So I'm going to take a fresh brush, dip it into here. I just love mixing these 3 colors, but I will tell you this, guys. Please make sure that you're working with monochromatics. You don't want to do, you can do like a red and a black, but you wouldn't want to do 3 colors on something that wasn't monochromatic. Pounce it in. I'm working very quickly. I don't have all day to work on this. I've got to work 1 section at a time. All right. Same thing again, same process. As we're building this up, and as this is drying, the first part that I applied first is going to dry first. When I start to see the cracks appear, that's when I lay my fingers down, and that's when I start lifting it. Pulling that, I want to pull enough away that I see the stain that I first did. I want to see the Bauhaus Buff is my first color. I want to see the Atelier, and I want to see this blending of gorgeous texture and color that's going to make it look so authentic. You're absolutely going to love it. All right, so is it starting to dry? Just a little bit. So look at this. Let's see. So I'll start to pull it. There we go. Now, let me show you. Those of you that are like, oh my gosh, she's painting with her fingers, I can't stand it. I've got to have something else. That's very easy. So what you can do, you can also use your brush. Now let me show you. So I've got a clean chip brush over here. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll lay a chip brush down into it and I'll pull it. And you'll notice, look how I'm laying it to the side like this. I'm not trying to paint up. I'll lay it to the side and I'll lift it. Those of you that are like, I just can't stand touching that, you're missing out. Think about when you were a child and how you would touch paint and how much fun it was. I just have to get in here and try to lift this. I want to be able to get back to where I can see that white. There it is. I want to see that gray. I can see some of that white again. That multi-layering, this is what makes this the $1 million finish, guys. Now, let me clean my hands again. It is kind of messy, but it's water-based. It doesn't have any VOCs. You don't have to worry about it hurting you. It's not toxic or anything like that. So then when it dries down, guess what? This is what it looks like. Now this is before I've actually waxed it. See our layers again? Isn't it fab? Bauhaus Buff, Atelier, A Good Man Is Hard to Find, with a coat of cracked patina in between each one, doing a light sanding. And then so all I need to do is come back, once it's completely dried, with my sandpaper. Now, it's going to be really, really important that you sand this to not necessarily distress it as much as it is when you touch that piece. I want it to be really nice and soft. When you've got this much texture and you've got this much going on, people are going to want to touch it. And I just want to make sure that it feels as good as it looks, because it totally can. All right, so let's just look again. Here's the final finish, and then here it is with all the steps. Why are they different? Well, because one has been waxed with dark wax, light wax, and dust of ages. So let's do that really quickly. So I'm gonna come back. I've got my 2 waxes. I've got my light wax and my dark wax. I'm always gonna use a separate brush for each. And then I've got my dust of ages. All right, so now I'm gonna load up just a little bit with my puck. Always offload it. And you're gonna come over the entire piece. You wanna get down in the crevices. When I'm wanting to have dust of ages in my piece, you wanna pounce it where you've got it down in the crevices. Now, you do want that to set long enough that when you come back with your dark wax, that it doesn't look like it's blended. So I would prefer, when you're doing this at home, allow this to dry at least, say 20 minutes, so that way you're not blending them. So let's come back. I'm gonna add just a little bit of dark, not a lot. Primarily, I'm focusing around the edges. And then last but definitely not least, let me say this. Please, please, please allow this to come to tack before you add the dust of ages. Because all that's gonna happen when you add the dust, if this wax is wet, it's just going to go to a dirty gray. You're not going to like it. So I've got to touch this and I've got to make sure two things. One, that it's not greasy, that it's not moving around. And once it's gotten to that point of being a nice temperature and just the right timing to put my dust on, it's going to be cooler to the touch. So now, I'm just to be able to show you, I'm going to take my clean brush again, load it up into my dust of ages, offload it just a little bit. Put it everywhere. Y'all are like, wow, she uses a lot. Yes, I do. Then you're going to take a lint-free rag and then you're going to buff it with the dust that's in it, like this. Now I can tell my wax was a little dry, a little wet, but I'm going to see if I can't make this work. And I'm buffing it with all that on there. It's going to stay down in the crevices. I'm not going to get that out. Pushed it a little bit because I can get a pretty sheen on it. I've got one that I've already done. Now I will say this. As far as having it to where you can get a prettier sheen, after it's had plenty of time to be able to dry, it can be a lot prettier. And that way you see the depth to it. It's gonna come across as a darker gray finish, but you're gonna see the stain. You're gonna see that light color. You're gonna see the depth. And then, you know what? You're gonna be able to enjoy the bragging rights because, silly camera, here's the deal. People are gonna say this, they're not gonna be able to decide how exactly you did this. And to me, that's the fun part. That's the fun part of being able to show people. It's like, how did you do that? I love chippy finishes. I don't know that chippy finishes will ever go out of style because they emulate those gorgeous antiques that we love. And guys, finishes sell furniture. Finishes are part of the reason why I get in so much trouble when I go to antique shows. It's because that color, that patina, that chippiness, that's what we fall in love with. So why don't we take the pieces instead of throwing them away and let's create finishes like this on them. So that way, one, you can enjoy the bragging rights, but two, it's something that you'll be able to enjoy in your home for years to come. So go back, watch the tutorial from the beginning. Hopefully you'll be really inspired in how you can create my double Oreo cookie finish with cracked patina because it is definitely one of those winner techniques that you need in your repertoire. Have a great